All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Jason Hubbard. I am COO here at RevGenius. We have an incredible panel here today. We're going to be talking about your demand gen playbook to scale beyond 25 million. Before we get into it, I want to give a huge shout out to Lean Data. Lean Data is our platinum sponsor who made RevCon possible this year. So thanks, guys. And then we're going to go around the horn real quick and let this great panel introduce themselves. Matt, you want to kick us off? Matt, you're no audio. Jane, you want to go ahead and go while Matt sorts that out?
You got it. Do I have audio?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Jane Sarah. I'm the VP of Growth Marketing at Daxtra's Recruitment Technology. And I'm also the creator of Women in B2B Marketing, a podcast. You should all check it out. It's not just for women. And I've been in B2B marketing for 17 or 18 years now.
Awesome. Matt, did you get yourself sorted out?
I think so. Can you hear me now?
We're good.
Yeah, I'm telling you, it's this. I was trying to use this microphone and it keeps bouncing me off. So we're just going to go with my AirPods. Hi,
exactly.
So now that that's handled, I'm Matt Lyman. I am the VP of Demand Generation at Lean Data. I have been in B2B marketing for longer than the number Jane said. And I've sort of stretched different industries from financial services into DevOps and now in the B2B SaaS world.
Awesome. Jennifer, take us to the end.
Yeah, sure. Hi, nice to meet everyone. I'm Jen McAdams. I'm currently the Chief Marketing Officer at Exactly. And similar to Matt, a lot of years in B2B marketing and tech, either hardware, software companies for my whole career. I will say, I'm looking at the chat. I'm calling in from New Hampshire, so it seems like New England's represented in the house here. And just a little fun fact: I have a rescue Chihuahua who has a lot of separation anxiety, so he's kind of here, but I'm trying to keep him fed with little handfuls of cat food, actually. So apologies to hear.
Similar thing here. If you'll see some motion in the background here, that's my golden retriever puppy, Penny. So who knows what she's getting into, but if you see something running around, that's what's going on there. All right, cool. So amazing panel. We were talking before we hopped on. We had about 24 different topics that we looked at and whittled it down to. But yeah, obviously there's a lot that goes into scaling beyond certain phases. And so what got you to 1 million is not going to necessarily get you to 10. What got you to 10 is not necessarily going to get you to 25, and from 25 on up, same story. So we're going to go into some of those things that you really need to make sure that you focus on, you have nailed down. And the first one we're going to start with is one that Jane suggested, and I actually had to ask her and confirm if what she had in mind was what I thought she had from it. But you need to have a testing budget. So Jane, since that was yours, why don't you first off let us know what you mean by testing budget, and then we can go into that.
Yeah, I just think it's always important whenever you're carving out your budget. It's first of all expected to be slashed. It always is in marketing, right, at any stage. But always carve out a test budget so that you can test out different channels, different creative outside of what you know works or what you have plans for specific channels. Because as we've all experienced, especially the last few years, what used to work no longer does. Everything is changing. It feels like every few months to 6 months, definitely less than a year time frame. So have budget to test out like Reddit ads if you haven't done that yet, YouTube ads, but beyond ads, right? New creative, new outsourced talent, right? And just having budget to test out all different ideas. And maybe it's a team building exercise too, getting the team to come up with crazy ideas and new content ideas, and then putting the test budget to one of those. It also brings the team together feeling like their voice is heard, and probably will work better than your existing channels at the end of the day.
That's great. I think one of the major reasons why I took the testing so early was it was a great strategy for settling debate. Like everybody's in their little corner and it's like, okay, well, let's test it. Like that's how we're going to get there and figure out what's going on. Matt, what do you see on this side of things? I mean, I don't know about you, but it seems like this pace of change and need to testing is only accelerating. I mean, it's getting to be kind of breakneck, and in a lot of ways, feel like the AI stuff is just serving to accelerate that even faster. But what are you seeing on this side?
Well, I want to just call out that I love that Jane just went through a few areas that you don't necessarily think about when you think of testing. I think leading off, you always say, oh, testing, let's do some A/B testing on the site or run different ad locations. But the actual like diving into the bringing in a contractor for content is huge, right? Like trying to get your, because what you're trying to do is, going back to the title, scale. And how do you do that? You actually have to do new things and try different things. And we've seen that. I think AI has become such a, I mean, it's a buzzword at this point because everything has AI in it. Everything does AI. Everything is an AI SDR or an AI content provider, blah, blah, blah. And so we have to up our game a bit as I mean, we're all marketers on here, we're all but as go to market, as revenue leaders, how do you actually utilize those things and where do you see the fluff? And testing comes in super important there, so you don't go and sign some sort of contract and say, let's test out the new AI thing. And it allows you to go and as go back to that original point of testing the message or the content or the actual placement.
Yeah, to go building on that, piece on thinking outside of the box of what you're testing. Like, it doesn't have to be those normal things as far as ad campaigns or copy or website design and stuff like that, but they can also and should extend into things on the operational side of things. So not just testing things at that micro level of it, but saying, okay, what happens if we combine air cover from content with ads with outbound, an ABM approach, or what happens whenever we align the content topics and themes that we're going out through the multi-channel and stuff like that. Like, it can get very macro in what you're doing with it across a lot of different roles and a lot of different functions. Jennifer, let's hear yours.
Yeah, I think when Jane mentioned the testing budget, I think that it really resonated with me. And I think it also, knowing that you have that set aside is also important for your discussions with your CFO. So that, CFOs like to know, okay, you're going to put in $1 and you're going to get $4 out, hopefully, right? And how do you make this a repeatable engine? And I keep telling him, like, we don't know. It's going to be, we're going to try some magic for now and we'll see what happens. But I am fortunate. I think I have one board member who has a go-to-market background, and she's always an advocate for saying exactly what Jane said. What works now might not even work 2 quarters from now. Like, oh, we've seen early success with a third party appointment setting service. Oh, that didn't go anywhere. Oh, we've seen early success with awareness from our ABM campaigns. Oh, we're not getting any leads out of it. So I think the importance of knowing that we're going to try things and fail fast and learn quickly is definitely a tenet of marketing and growing.
Yeah, I'm going to get on my soapbox here real quick on, when it comes to testing, because I run into this more and more, it seems to be. Testing is not measuring. Measuring is just tracking something. It's a necessary part of testing, but it is not testing. To test something, you actually have to have a hypothesis. Hey, this is what we're going to actually be testing. This is what's going to give us, an indication one way or another. This is how we're going to measure that, and this is how we're going to go report on that. And I see that way too often where those two things get conflated with each other, and it drives me crazy. Matt, you look like you had something you were going to say to that.
Well, yeah, and I think it sort of ties everything through it too, because as you get in there and we're all looking at the measurement of it, you have to be able to measure it, yes, but you then have to also be able to show the value of what you did. And this is where you get into some of the people side of things. Every company is different, every leadership team is different, but to be able to fail fast, you have to have a trust between those teams, and you have to be able to say, yeah, I've got this budget, I have this idea that we're going to go run, here's what I expect. You have to actually be able to go into it with, here's what I expect based off of the measurements we've done in the past. So you can actually dive further into it and have that ability to test and fail. Because if you don't go in and say, hey, I think that this launch that we're doing is going to drive 30 new inbound requests in the first week, you're just putting your finger up in the air without any sort of detail. And if you don't hit that 30, you can then look at it and say, why? Now let's try a different thing next time.
Yeah, and I'll admit the political like soft side of things is something I've struggled with traditionally. If the data and my results don't speak for themselves, then I don't do a great job of going and trying to massage that. But
Mhm.
yeah, there's also a lot of truth to what they say about us entrepreneurs. We make terrible employees. Um, Well, cool. So the second one that we talked about, and I think it ties into the testing piece because in order to be able to leverage this effectively and be able to tell whether you're actually acting on the right things, you need to be testing it and being able to verify that. And these are signaling and intent. These have been hot buttons, hot topics that people have had a lot lately. There's been a lot technologically that's driven that. We were able to get in and measure more stuff, being able to do it across different platforms, breaking down different data silos, stuff like that. CDPs are becoming more and more common as they become democratized and move down market from enterprise where they've been traditionally. And so there's a lot more opportunity to be able to leverage these. And when we talk about intent, it doesn't have to be things like Bombora and stuff like that, which is third-party intent. You can have second-party intent, which is stuff where you can go and mine it off of things like job boards, stuff like that. And then you have first-party intent, where that's actually your stuff like what are people engaging with, what pages are they hitting, are they opening emails, clicking on links and stuff. But yeah, let's talk through kind of how you see this being leveraged and how is that critical and instrumental in getting past this 25 million point. Jennifer, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, sure. So, I think the signals, it's interesting too. When you go to like Forrester or any of the analysts, they're talking about signals and monitoring signals, but the rubber meets the road, I think, with how do you action that? Like, how do I operationalize this? How do I automate this? How do I make sure that we're aggregating our signals in the right way? And, as you guys all know, there's a lot of tools out there that can help you do it. And then that leads to the next problem is like, wait, now I have this tech stack that keeps growing and growing. And as everybody gets, introduces new features and or combines with other players in the market, now you have tech stack that overlaps each other. So I think that there's a lot to the signals and the signal monitoring. And I think the other thing that is who's catching the signals. That's the piece too. Like we were just looking at data yesterday, I'm ashamed to say, about how our sales team is leveraging the iframes of signals that they have available to them and who is and who isn't. So I think the other thing about signals is there's a million of them out there. So the trick is finding the right way and tool to help you aggregate it and make it actionable in such a way for marketing and sales.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a great point. I mean, a danger that a lot of people don't pay enough attention to is you can get too much noise by too many data points, too much that you're measuring, too many pieces of tech, and then it's hard to find the signal when you do that.
Such a good
Back,
point. I was just
go ahead, Jay.
introduced to a term last year, and I'm probably still late to this game on hearing this term, but shelfware. We're so excited about new tools, especially again the last few years, or for myself, that you purchase a tool and you're so excited to get everyone onto this and onboarded, but then there's no owner, there's no clear rollout plan, and then it gets
Yeah.
forgotten, just put on the shelf. So it's shelfware that you're paying a lot of money for out of that budget. So to avoid doing that, it's also really important. I think a lot of us forget that some signals we already have, right? Like who's visiting certain web pages. We see that in Google Analytics. We can see that in HubSpot or whatever system we have as a core system. And we can see this data, what information, like you said, the zero and first party intent, where are we seeing them going? What information are they providing when they sign up for a webinar, for an event like this, right? What are they saying they're interested in? Leveraging all of those signals that we already have free or built into what we already, the tools we use on a daily basis. And then as we scale and we can bring in new tools, definitely, like Jennifer said, making sure you have a game plan for user adoption. Who's running this? Who's owning this? Which will, I'm sure, get us into ops that we'll talk about next, Jason. But who's owning this, and how do we make sure that people are using it and it's getting used internally? For me, what's been really helpful on that end is leveraging internal case studies and success stories, right? Like Bob used Reveal or User Gems to do XYZ, which resulted in this opportunity, this pipeline, this closed one deal. So showing that using these tools and how to use it in examples and use cases
Yeah.
goes such a long way.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, at least, the first party intent signals tend to be the most reliable. And one of the things I started doing a few years ago is what I called engineered intent signals. Creating pieces of content or things where it'd be really, really weird if you're engaging with that if you didn't have the type of
Yeah.
intent that was built to try and create engagement around. And so, whenever you can get it down to that level of granularity, incredibly powerful intent signals.
And
Matt,
when we put it, when we put it into the scaling conversation too, right? You go look at it, and if you've got, you can do this with your basic tools at the start. You can go in and say, this is what we've got, this is the data we have, this is where I start getting into my, yes, go build yourself a lead scoring model. It's not as hard as you think it is. You can then go through it, and as you start to scale, that changes, the intent signals change. But when you start out, like, you should be providing as many intent signals as you can to your sales team or to your partner team or to whoever's there, so they can work through them. As you scale and you hone that and you get better and you get more intent, maybe it's from the external providers, but I think Jen, you mentioned earlier when you said, like, those, they can help you do it, those intent signals, but that's just information that they're providing you. It may not be perfect for you. It may not be exactly what you're looking for. This is not a against Sixth Sense or demand based or any of those. They give you really good data, but it may not be exactly for you. So use what you have internally, and as you scale your communications, maybe it's a spreadsheet that you're giving to your sales team on a weekly basis. Maybe it's a Slack message that goes through. That starts to lower, so it's not noise. But at the beginning, like, just sharing that and honing that and working with that team to understand how it's building um, is super important.
yeah, and to build on what I started with about the testing and understanding what your data is actually saying piece of it, the testing is not just on the, hey, is this actually an intent signal? Is this actually a reliable intent signal? It's as much, if not more, on what you're doing with those signals. The signals may be great. They may be telling you exactly what you think they are, but you may be misusing them. And a quick example of that, whenever I ran growth at Astronomer, we were built on the open source Airflow project. So we had millions of people coming in and consuming our content, our guides, our KVs, all of that stuff in support of that Airflow project. And that was, being able to identify the tune of 8,000 net new companies a month that were coming to the site and consuming this type of content. And combining that with all kinds of second, third party data and stuff like that. Like, I went and poached a analyst from DraftKings. Like, we pushed everything into a Snowflake data lake, you name it. Most complex thing that I've ever built or done. Our signals were unbelievable. I would pass that stuff to my reps and have them go reach out to them. And we ran into a pretty interesting problem. They'd reach out to these companies that I knew were on Airflow, that I knew had specific things we were trying to solve for. I could even say, hey, here's the tech that they're looking to plug into. They'd call into it and they'd get somebody and be like, yeah, no, we're definitely not using Airflow. Because Airflow is such a widely applicable, can be used in so many different roles and stuff like that, that they didn't know who in the organization was actually using it. And so it'd be like, no, you are, I'm certain of that. You just don't know who that is. And so it gets complicated a lot of times at that execution piece of it, which is a great segue into what'll probably be our last one. But operationally, how do you actually build the infrastructure and that you need to be able to scale past this 25 million part? So we talked about three things that are critical to it: the right people, the right processes, and the right tech. So who wants to kick this one off?
I'll start. I think we were joking in the prep session too, like, oh, it sounds easy, right? Just get the right people and the right processes and the right tech stack, and you're off to the races. But it's really hard. It's hard to do, and I think Matt has examples of marrying the people and the processes. But I also think that finding the right people with the right mindset is critical. So your team at 5 million can be your same team at 50 or 100 million, as long as you are finding the people who are willing to Jane's point, like, willing to try anything, willing to play any position. Like, we need somebody on corporate communications this week, and it's not a position we're going to staff full time, but can someone take this? And I think finding those utility players is key to scaling. So I really do think that the people piece of it is critical.
Absolutely.
Are you
Absolutely.
saying that marketing generalists are back in style? Woo!
I
to be
wrote
able to
that down during our set. I
Did you?
literally wrote that down in my notes. I was like, generalist.
I feel like that makes me so happy because as a generalist for so long, like it kind of gave me imposter syndrome, not going super deep into one specific area.
Yeah.
It is so helpful to have generalists on your team who can hop from one to the other. And if you have consultants or anything that's outsourced, be able to see what they're doing, ask the right questions, but let somebody else focus on specifics of execution. So agree.
Yeah, almost universally, my favorite hires that I've ever made are people that had no direct experience in what I hired them to do. Liberal arts majors, almost universally, have been some of my, yeah, some of my best, most effective. Part of it may just have to do with my leadership style. Like, I don't hold hands, I don't spoon feed. I expect somebody to come and own something and become the expert on that. And so, sort of a sink or swim thing. And having a background where you had to figure things out for yourself and you had to ask those questions is pretty key for working with me in general. But I also like to think that it's just a great pool of people that I think are underutilized.
Yeah, I had a leader a few years ago who told me that she always liked to hire for ability and not skill, because skills can be taught. And my very specific example of that is, if you have somebody who is really good at Marketo, but you use Eloqua, I don't know why, but you do. I'm sorry, Eloqua, rude. That was rude. That was rude. But you use a different one. You have Marketo, but you use, but they know, and they were like the best Marketo person ever. If they have the skills to do that process, you can spend some time with the right abilities to have them learn how to do it in the new tool. So getting the people is huge. And then if you've got the processes in place, it helps them build it out. My team is so tired of hearing this. I live in Seattle. I'm a Seattle Seahawks fan. I've said this over the last week like 4 times. Our new head coach said, inside of discipline is creativity. And I hate, it sounds so weird, but if you think about it in the instance where if you've got a plan in front of you, you've got your data in front of you saying these are what our targets are, you have a process documentation set up, and then you set your team free to go do what they need to do with those. They're going to be enabled and they're going to have that creativity. And so I think like having the people who are willing to learn and do those things and who have the ability to, they don't even have to be a generalist, but if you can write an email and you're coming in to help me out with a thing, great, thank you, let's do that. Yeah, budgets we have to be more efficient all over the place, regardless of the size of your company. Your marketing team has to be more efficient.
Jane, it looks like you're going to say something.
Yeah, I'm curious. This is kind of coming up from this conversation. I'm curious how everyone feels about the trend towards, especially in this environment where there's so many amazing people on the market and there's fewer jobs, it feels, in marketing. Hiring somebody who has done exactly what you need to do, they've done it already. I see this trend, and it kind of goes to what you're all talking, like hiring somebody who hasn't done it and maybe isn't necessarily specifically trained in this area, but they have the chops and they have the drive. I personally am so against hiring someone who's done it before because they could be bored. They've already done it. They're not going to be as motivated or excited versus somebody who really wants to get this achievement on their resume and call it a huge achievement. So I don't know. How do you all feel about that trend?
Well, I mean, if they've done it before, they've already learned all the wrong ways to do it. Now you've got to go unlearn it with them.
True.
It makes me think of I don't know how true this was. Maybe it was just because they wouldn't hire me. But when I was in college and I was trying to get a job at Starbucks, I had been a barista at a different place before, and I heard that they didn't want that. They wouldn't hire me because they wanted somebody to learn how they did it.
Ooh.
But I think this was a long time ago, so I don't know if that's true. I'm just saying maybe I was bad at it. But it's also a case of like, I think it also depends, Jane, on where you're going with that. So if you need it in the short term and you're like, this person's going to help us scale where we're going, and you have that conversation with them, like, we're going to get it up and running, we're going to get moving, maybe they help build out a team from that point on. So I think like it's a really great question because I could see it both ways.
I think it depends on the urgency too. And what sprang to mind for me is hiring SDRs. So we have recently been hiring senior SDRs who have done it before, because through attrition and it's a great problem to have when your SDRs get promoted, but from
Right.
the sales team taking SDRs, and we had so many empty chairs. Like we can't afford a 3-month ramp on this. Like we need somebody who can get on the phones right away. So I think it depends on the urgency of the problem that you're trying to solve, potentially as well.
Yeah, it definitely depends on the urgency. Also, obviously depends on the role. Like when I went and coached that analyst from DraftKings, that was not a role I was going to go and bring somebody in that had little no experience doing something like that. I needed somebody that knew how to build a technical CDP like that. But Matt, I'm very much on the same page as you. Like I look for 2 qualities, and that's really what I'm looking for above and beyond all else. And don't pay a whole lot of attention to experience or anything else. And that's, do they have intellectual curiosity, and do they have hustle? If you bring those 2 things to the table, I can teach you damn near anything. I can't teach you those 2 things, and if you don't have those 2 things, then we're probably not going to work out. And so that's what I really look for whenever I'm interviewing, whenever I'm hiring, especially if I can find some deep intellectual curiosity where it's like across different backgrounds. Hey, I code, but I have an interest in history and I play music. It's like, okay, that's really interesting. Now you're talking about somebody who's very varied in what they do and stuff like that. And I find that those typically wind up being some of my best hires and the people I wind up leaning on the hardest. And I don't know about you guys. When I find those people, I do everything I can to hold on to them and bring them everywhere with me I can. And typically I lose them because I can't afford them anymore.
Exactly. But then it's great that you helped get them to that point.
Oh, absolutely. Right. I love watching them become rock stars.
It's the best feeling. It's the best.
Absolutely. Well, we got a couple of minutes left. Just a quick one to go around about, if you had to pick one thing that's the biggest challenge getting past and above that $25 million hump, what would you say it is? Matt, I'll put you on the spot.
Sure. This feels like a cop-out. Alignment. I feel like, especially when you have the big numbers in front of you and you're like, we're trying to get here, we're trying to get here, we're trying to get here. When people feel like you're not getting to that point or you're not succeeding, everyone reverts back to, what do I need to do? How do I make this happen? And that's a lot of times when you see the breakdowns between the different teams, when you see sales and marketing start fighting a ton, right? And so for me, I would say that if you can keep your team aligned to the targets and keep the guardrails and the sort of rules of engagement in place, you continue to test and you continue to coach those people and try those new things, you're gonna do it. But if you don't have that alignment between your messaging, between the activities that you're running, and your sales team and marketing team feeling aligned, it's gonna not work.
30 seconds apiece, Jen.
Sorry.
Oh,
I think radical prioritization too, or ruthless prioritization, just really keeping the focus on the North Star.
Absolutely. And finding that North Star.
Yes.
Jane?
Prioritization was exactly mine, but I had a second, so I'll go with that. It's branding. Branding is so key, and it's personal branding. So be it your own. Everybody on this call listening should be building their personal brand for your own sake and for your companies. But remember, for your personal sake first and foremost. But also find people within your company's brand that would be great rock stars and reach your ICP that they would listen to and build their brand as well. Because without brand, there's no demand right now. So.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. It's been an incredible session. Thanks, Jane, Jennifer, Matt. I also want to give a huge shout out to Lean Data, our platinum sponsor. Now let's head over to the next talk.